Hello, hello. Welcome to everyone. I hope you all can hear me great. Am I good? To my panelists in the studio, great. They're smiling, so you must can hear me. I just want to welcome all of you all who are tuning in to our inaugural Fireside Chats series. So before we get into anything, I just like to start with saying, as my pastor would say, you all can be an Apple apostle, social media evangelist, and just hit the share button on this video so that all of your friends and family in your network can see and hear this wonderful series that's about to begin. So before I bring on our panelists for this evening, again, just want to thank everyone who is here with us. This is our first of this series, so this is a very special evening that you all are about to partake in. Just a few notes about it. The purpose of this series is really twofold. The one is so that we can continue to spread throughout our audience and the country and the world all of the wonderful things that we are doing at TNTP, teaching fellows across our programs, some of which you'll hear representing in a minute. But that's the first reason, so you all can learn more about us and us about you. And then secondly, so that we can create a space where we can engage in important topics that are relevant not just to teachers or even future teachers, but everyone who is passionate and interested in certain issues that are impacting us all, and most pressing, our children and our communities. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring on our panelists for this evening. It's going to be very short and sweet, so we're just going to jump right into it. I hope that's okay. But before they come on and introduce themselves, I just want to say that I feel very humbled to be in the midst of this great wisdom and experience that you're about to hear come from these two wonderful participants slash panelists. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it. They're going to introduce themselves. So Johari and Troy, if you don't mind, I guess Troy, if you don't mind going first, they're just gonna tell us their name, where they're from, where they currently live, and so that they can have this right in front of them. I'm gonna send this to them, where they currently live, their position at TNTP, what do they do with TNTP, and then lastly and most relevantly, how do they practice self-care? So I'm going to kick it right over to Troy. Come off mute and kick us off.
All right, thank you, Tariq. Good to see both of you and Johari. I'm Troy, and I am an effectiveness coach in Indianapolis. I live in Indianapolis with Indianapolis Teaching Fellows, and I have been with the organization for 1 year. Matter of fact, I just had my 1 year anniversary on the 6th of this month, and enjoy being a part of this great organization as well as this great group here in Indianapolis, and just enjoy investing in the lives of people. And glad to be on this chat with Johari and yourself.
All right, thank you, Troy. How are you? How's everyone? My name is Johari Toe. I want to make sure I follow directions well. I am a native of Baltimore. I'm also the director of the Baltimore teaching residency. I'm a little bit, I think I have a year and 2 months now. I've been with TNTP for a year and 2 months. And how do I practice self-care? It's different. The older I get, the more it becomes a more personal journey. But I will say right now, my self-care is learning to give myself grace, to extend grace to myself. So
very important. And thank you all again for being here, and thank you for introducing yourselves and sharing a little tidbit of what we're now about to get into. So just to set the stage a little bit, sort of the reasoning and the rationale behind kicking off the series with this topic is, which is prioritizing teacher wellness, self-care. The rationale behind beginning our series with this is because we recognize that this month of December is very important, especially around the holidays, that we keep in mind the importance of being well, not just as teachers, but just like as human beings. So we find it very relevant to begin this series with this conversation, but also because we know that teaching is extremely important, but just like any profession, it deserves a space to ensure that inside of this teaching profession, for those who are in it, uh, but especially for those who are considering it, that we are all very straightforward and transparent about the ways in which we want you to not only teach our wonderful students, but also make sure that you are taking care of yourself so that you can be, so that there's something inside of you to actually pour out, that you're pouring into yourself. So just want to preface with that. But to begin, I'm just going to kind of throw it out there to our panelists with a question, and this is a question that I have heard many people ask who have applied or thought about applying, and that is teaching hard? Now, there's a lot in the news. The news is replete with many narratives about what it means to teach, and I'll leave that as broad as that was put out there. So just kind of starting there, from your experiences, is teaching hard?
Troy, you mind if I go first? Okay, thank you, friend. Um, I would say no. If you would have asked me this question 22 years ago, I definitely would have said yes. I think if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have said yes also. But what I have learned in my journey is hard is how you define it. I think a lot of times we enter teaching with a savior complex, and we get very concerned about saving folks versus building relationships and moving children and seeing children as being successful. So our work should be our lens, but we make everything else our lens. So I think we set up situations because of the work of teaching to invest ourselves in everything. So it's hard to see us doing the thing that's most important, which is believing, supporting, teaching, and challenging children. We see it as being hard because that's not our focus. Our focus is everything else. But when we redefine our work and we understand that servanthood is a part of teaching, and our goal is to focus on those who are in front of us and not trying to change the entire world, I think hard becomes a word we can redefine. There's challenges, there's struggles, but I think hard is such like a deafening word that has a end result to it when it's about the journey.
Yeah, and I would agree with Johari and just layer in that it's a grind, right? And anything that's worth uh, achieving, there's going to be a grind to it, and not just a physical grind, but it's a mental grind, an emotional grind, a spiritual grind. And I think that's the rub that a lot of times people experience and people may even explain and express. But I think I think it's a process, right? And so the prize is at the end, but the process has to happen to get to the prize. And I think the prize is obviously seeing those light bulbs on the faces of children, seeing the parents begin to celebrate because their students are achieving a level that they didn't think they could achieve at because things were, because of teachers in the past or schools in the past or whatever the case may be, or lack of confidence. But the process is a grind, but the prize is worth the process. So I would just say, yeah, anything that's worthwhile, you're going to have to roll your sleeves up, tighten your belt buckle up, and make it happen. But in the end, the impact is so fulfilling that is the challenges.
Before I jump in, just want to lift up your background. Really appreciate that, Troy. But yeah, on this subject or this concept of, I heard both of you all say, or Johar, you mentioned the journey, or Troy, you mentioned the grind or the process. With those things in mind, and also the perceptions and the intentions that we sometimes, or teachers come into the classroom with, sort of based on your experiences, which you all kind of come from an education background before joining TNTP, but still different fields within education, based on what you have seen from teachers and the perhaps mistakes that they have made as it relates to their perceptions of teaching when they came into the classroom or the school. Uh, how did you coach them through that process or that grind? Or perhaps, Johari, through those complexes, the savior complex. How did you coach, and how does one coach? Because you all both have that experience. How does one coach someone through that so that they can get beyond that stumbling block, if you will, preventing them from really fully embracing the journey and not just what's right in front of them?
So I'm going to say the thing that's not popular. I don't think, here's what I realized, and I think I realized this more when I was a principal. Um, we don't teach teachers to celebrate themselves. We anchor teachers in for all of the right reasons, knowing the curriculum, understanding data, getting to know your students, and your students are valuable. They are important, but you're valuable too, right? So I think as you progress through these stages, preparing yourself to be a teacher, you're directly and indirectly taught to start dumping out all of your needs, your desires, your passions, in order to make sure that your kids are able to achieve. I push back on that because I think the more I dig in and understand me, the more my kids can achieve because I become okay with myself and the skin that I'm in. And I don't think that's something that we teach our teachers to lead with humanity first with themselves and then lead with humanity with students. So the idea of coaching teachers through those moments, like when you do have the savior complex, right, is just kind of having a conversation about your job was never to save. Your job is to educate. Your job was never to come in and change your child's home life. You're not there. It's not your job. It's not in your rear wagon. Your job is to teach. Your job is not even to be concerned about what happens when the bell rings when they go home. It's to make sure that you are prepared from when the morning bell rings to the evening bell. That's it. And so if we start to teach our teachers to treasure themselves and to celebrate small wins that are based on, sometimes is I got everybody to sit down today and listen, and we got the lesson taught. That's a small win. But we teach ourselves that it's not good enough until we get to the end of the year or to all the, like, you got to be able to do two things at one time. And so my coaching has always been around the human space of like, who asked you to be a savior? You're good enough as you are. If you're humble, you understand the work that you have in front of you. If you're trying to be a savior, you're comparing yourself to impossible odds. So that means you're going to fail. What happens when you are just good enough? You're where you're supposed to be. And let's tackle what's in front of you, what you can put your hands on, versus trying to do 800 things. And that literally is how I start and end coaching with administrators or teachers, because we're just not fair to ourselves. We don't give ourselves enough grace. We don't celebrate ourselves enough.
Johari, I think that was excellent. I saw some chats that came across that was powerful, and it was. And I think just my perspective in coaching people, teaching that mentality, or even just a different process of dealing with how they're showing up based upon previous experiences and previous exposures, right? And so we can't divorce our experience and exposures from how we show up. And so for me, it's been I attack it from the standpoint of authentic, right? And showing them, hey, listen, we can't move past mindsets if we don't show up and be authentic and be introspective. And I try to establish that from the very beginning in my coaching with individuals. And I can kind of have a discerning eye and hear just because I ask questions in regards to when I start to sense certain mindsets starting to be pervasive or be prevailing. And the thing is this, I don't care, where you go from here. I care where you are now. And hopefully, if I can get a push into thinking, look here, I'm showing up this way because of what I've experienced, what I've been exposed to, and really be introspective and challenge myself to push my thinking past a mindset that is locked into a box. and realize that the world is bigger than my little box and my little circle or my little sphere of existence, then what that can do is that can become something that can be transferable into the next stop. And if I can be impactful in that one person, and they can take that same story and transfer that to another setting, then what have I done? Well, I planted seeds, and it's come along and been watered. Growth is beyond what we can even fathom, and that's the mindset I try to coach teachers through, because to me, it's bigger than just your moment you're teaching. It's about a lifestyle, it's a mindset.
Yes, mindsets. You hear that a lot. Well, we'll all hear that a lot, I'm sure, in this conversation. Is very important. And one thing that this connects to, which is what someone submitted to with their RSVP form. And by the way, I see the comments in the chat. Keep sending them in. We'll try to lift up some of them. I did see a question from one of our audience members. I'm going to weave into the conversation, but wanted to go back to what someone submitted, and that is this concept of leaving work at work and leaving home at home. Because it's important, not like you all were just saying, not to kind of create this box or this stifling mindset or atmosphere as to where our job or the job of teaching never ends, which it does, which is important to keep in mind for our own or for teachers' own well-being. But one of the questions that was submitted was around this concept of work-life balance. For example, for those who have children, don't have children, have other responsibilities, or someone that they're the caregiver for a relative, a spouse, etc. And the question that was asked was, with all of these things so far that we've kind of already mentioned, how do we keep or ensure that we're creating time for myself or the teacher's self, educator's self, make time for them and their mental, emotional time commitments? So how do we keep all of these things in balance? Which you all have kind of already alluded to, but if you want to add on anything to that.
Yeah, and let me jump in here real quick, Jahari. And Tariq, I think it's for me this. It's we have to move past just being declarative that we're doing self-care, and it has to be deliberate. Right. And so a lot of times it's just a mantra. We just, self-care. And that's cool. And it sounds good. It sounds catchy. It sounds hip. It sounds, in vogue or whatever. But at a certain point in time, where are we being intentional about making it happen? And I think balance is a kind of a nebulous, ambiguous kind of word. Right. And it can just be so, balance is tough to achieve. When you factor in all the different plates that keep spinning at the same time, and a married life with children, with spouse, with whatever obligations that you have, school or whatever the case may be, balance is tough to strike. So I like to look at it more so of an alignment issue, right? And align yourself with your why. And so when you start, it's like your car, right? When you're aligned to your why, it's like your car driving down the street. And so when you hit potholes, you realize, okay, man, my car's not riding the same way it was. It's probably an alignment issue. So I said, what do I have to do? Go get it realigned. And that's the same thing with our lives. At some point in time, we had to get realigned. We hit those potholes in life, and we start to drift away from our why. It's not the problem that we become misaligned. The problem is if we don't do anything about the misalignment. And I think that's how we can really strike a chord that allows us to be able to practice self-care and still be able to be effective where we are.
I just want to jump in really quick before you come in, Johari, to you, Troy, and you can add on, or actually, if you don't mind, Johari, you can come right afterwards, and if you can attack what I'm about to ask as well. Is there such thing as a balance, or should there?
Well, and that was my whole argument. Yeah, I don't know if it's possible to balance. I think it's kind of like the dog chasing the car, right? If the dog gets the car, what does it do with it? And I think that's kind of what balance looks like, because we spend so much time trying to find balance. When we get whatever balance looks like, what do we do with it? Because it's so foreign to us. And I think that's why alignment really keeps us in a better space to be able to be aware when we come out of alignment, and then be able to make the adjustments to get us back in alignment.
So I think to Troy's point, and to your point, I don't agree with the word balance. I think balance is like one of those things that we believe in as adults that pigeonhole us and hold us into like this emotional prison, because it's almost like if you don't do it, then you fail. I actually believe in acceptance. Like, I have to accept my journey for what it is. That doesn't mean there's not space for me to improve. That doesn't mean there's not space for me to be humble and understand what I don't know. But I think self-care starts at acceptance. And it's not just, okay, I'm accepting. It starts with, I'm accepting my skin, my weight, my hair, my whole thing, right? But I think that's like the iceberg. That's like what you see above, what you see above, like that sea level. What I think the biggest part of self-care is the acceptance of, I be who I be. I show up how I show up. And it's not, to Troy's point, a declarative statement as if there's no space to maneuver. It means that I'm accepting the space that I take up in this world right now, understanding that I'm a student also. So to love me today might be affirmations. For me to love myself today might be affirmation. For me to love myself tomorrow might be watching trash TV. I don't know. For me to love myself, if I'm accepting of me, then that means my self-care is not an algorithm that has to constantly work out a particular way. My self-care is who I be and what I need. Glenn Singleton said, the most important thing a teacher brings to the classroom is not the curriculum, it's themselves. So we can't we can't walk into work and leave home away, because we're human. We can't walk into spaces and be robotic. We're not transactional people. We're not transactional. We're people. So there's all this transformation that's happening around us. But when we put ourselves in transactional spaces, we limit ourselves. We limit our self-care to what it was told to me to be. When we understand our journey as being transformational, we accept we accept what we don't know, and we enjoy the moments that we have, and we don't beat ourselves up over not being able to be whatever the rest of that is. So however you love on yourself, if it doesn't start with that acceptance, that's the 80% that's under the water, then all you're doing is being performative for yourself, which means you're not going to feel successful at anything. Forget the teacher part. You're not going to feel successful as a human. So your career is only going to be judged based on how you love yourself wholly as a human before you take on all of those titles for mother, father, whatever.
Well said. Well said. I want to kind of transition us towards, yes, we're already at the end, believe it or not. So much more to be said, but that's why we have part 2, 3, 4, etc. But I want to kind of transition this now, because something I've been seeing, and I'm sure you all have as well, is that a lot of schools are now incorporating some of these, well, yeah, I'll put it this way. A lot of schools are now incorporating many social emotional learning practices in the way that their schools operate, from not just for teachers, but for students as well. So my question is kind of, based on what you all have seen, what recommendations would you make for how schools can execute these types of initiatives with to do it right? How would you recommend schools to get this right? Not just for teachers, but for students as well.
Man, that's tough. And that's an interesting question. I'm going to try to be careful with my words, but not be careful, if that makes sense. Because I think it's an important issue, because SEL has become that new thing, especially on the other side of the pandemic. Now, we knew going into the pandemic, well, we should have known, that anytime you put a person alone with their thoughts for an extended period of time, there's going to be some unique results on the other side. And what we're seeing is the residue of people being alone with their thoughts for so long, okay? And so we can try and put a cookie cutter SEL model that seems to be the new and greatest and shiniest thing. But at the end of the day, that's not going to work. And I know I'm saying some real strong words, but I mean that, because at a certain point in time, it has to be about the person you put in place and the perspective that you have with that person. Meaning that that person cannot be locked into a cookie cutter curriculum, because everybody's needs are not going to look the same demographic to demographic. housing development to housing development, okay? Because that's where I taught, and that stuff that was coming across that no, it has to be having an intentional relationship with my student, with who I'm serving, and then taking that and adjusting whatever plans I had, whatever curriculum I had to meet the needs that they have in that current space. Because just because it worked in Baltimore doesn't mean it's going to work in Indianapolis. And the school system has to be aware that we have to push more than just dollars to this. This is a dedication issue. We're dedicating this curriculum or this process because we want to see people be great. And great, it may look different in different places. There's much more I can say, but I want to put that in JT's and Hari's lap and let her do her thing.
With a minute and 20 seconds left. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. So since I have now a minute and 10 seconds, I think the whole conversation of social emotional learning, to Troy's point, has become a buzzword, but I think again it's about acceptance. Like, I'm gonna make it simple. I'm not gonna overcomplicate it. If I James Baldwin said, and I had to write this down because I'm not that smart to remember it myself. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see, right? Social emotional learning is about seeing the thing that's sometimes that's obvious and a thing that's hidden, and addressing it based off of your needs and your ability. So it's going to look different depending on people. If I accept you, if I accept my school community, even if it's in disagreement with how I live my life, but I accept my school community, then I'm going to put resources in the building in order to support families that may live in contradiction to what I believe families look like, right? But it's not about me. It's about acceptance. Me accepting I'm okay with me, but the world is actually big enough to hold more than just me. And so my social emotional is being able to see the thing that's in front of me, align resources, and not get into the values of who should or shouldn't, but understand that if my kids need this, if my Latinx Hispanic community needs this, if my special ed population needs this, if my families need this, I'm going to break down the walls of why they can't and give it, because I accept them for who they are, just like I'm hoping that they accept me. But at the end of the day, we sit in power positions, our positional power, our relational power. It's not about us proving anyone right or wrong. Social emotional learning is about accepting people for where they are, meeting their needs where they are, with the expectation of moving them to where they need to be educationally. Because we're doing all of this for them to be present in the classroom. We're not doing it to make them feel good just because. It's in order for them to be present. So accept, set the track. Let's keep moving forward without there being a game plan of it has to look like this. And I'll stop there.
Perfect place to stop. And I just want to segue us into our last question, because at the end of the day, I want to be very direct with our audience. We are here to find exceptional teachers to teach our students. That's what we're all about. So I just want to make sure I leave our audience with some practical ways for those who are considering becoming a teacher, and hopefully with us. If not, teacher in general, doesn't matter. But the what I want to leave with you all is, how can I develop habits now while I'm in this preparation, deliberation, whatever phase before I enter a teacher preparation program? How can I develop best habits now in order to be prepared for the joys and challenges that will come with teaching, as far as it relates to teacher wellness and self-care? What are the things that I should be and can be doing today to be prepared?
Troy, can I go first? Okay, thank you. I think it's not about sitting. It's not about reading a book or anything. I think it's sitting at the feet of those who are doing the work now, and intentionally looking to talk to people who have something positive to say. There are so many teachers who have so many amazing things that are happening. Every teacher has amazing things that are happening. The question is, can they see it, right? But sit at the feet and talk to those who are older than you, younger than you, who do different things, but are teachers. Talk to them about their success stories. Don't allow them to tell you about what can. Ask them about what can. And then, as Troy said earlier, think about your why. Why are you even doing this? Why are you entering into education? What problem do you want to solve in the world of education? Not the kids you want to fix. What problem do you want to solve? And from that perspective, sit at the feet of those and just be a listener. You'll pick up resources. That's the easy part. But the question is, do you hear how folks have committed to themselves and the work in order to do the thing that they love to do? Because there are a lot of teachers that still are passionate and love this work. There are more that are passionate and love it versus those who are not. It's just their stories don't make the news. So sit at the feet, listen, enjoy the moment of being a learner, and then wrestle with your why and take that leap into faith and come into the world of teaching, not as a savior, but as a human ready to learn and ready to teach. Brother Troy.
Real quick, I would say this. I would say mine, as Johari just elocuted that wonderfully. I would say this. I would take a different perspective and add that to what she just said, and that is check your attitude, right? Because my attitude travels with me, and I would really be introspective and address that why again. I know I've said that before, but that why is what anchors you, right? And not just saying it just to say it, but is this why I'm really passionate? Because if I'm really passionate, then I'll deal with the hurts, I'll deal with the heartaches, I'll deal with the hardships, because I realize that that's a part of the process. And then the last thing I would say is, if you struggle with forgiveness, teaching probably isn't for you. Because at the end of the day, what forgiveness is clean up everybody's mess, clean up somebody's mess, because you're willing to do it, and you know they may mess on you again. And that's what a student does, and that's what staff will do. And if that's something that you struggle with, teaching is probably not the profession for you. But if you can pass that, then I think, man, if you do what Johari said, and some of the things we've been talking about, I think this is a field that you can excel in, and not just excel in, but you can be impactful for this generations to come.
An impact is exactly what we're after. Just want to thank you all so much. So for those in the audience, please show some love to our wonderful panelists today, this evening, in the comments, if you will. And while you're doing that, I'm going to transition us really quick to our conclusion. I just want to make sure that you all, our audience, have ways to stay in touch and stay in the loop with what we have coming up. So for those who would like to stay in contact with us, we have our email address up here. That's info@tntpteachingfellows.org. You can follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then, of course, our website, where you can learn all about our programs and what we have to offer at tntpteachingfellows.org. And again, just want to encourage you, if you feel that you are ready to apply with one of our programs in Baltimore, Minnesota, New Orleans, and Indianapolis, you can take a snapshot of that QR code or hit the apply link in our description. And then, of course, we have our Nominate a Future Teacher referral program going on right now. We actually just concluded one of them, where we have awarded 3 people already with a $75 gift card. So we have another opportunity for you. If you know someone who would make a fantastic teacher, just follow that link in our description to refer them and enter into our raffle to win a $75 gift card, where we will be doing our next drawing on January 9th of 2023. So less than 1 month away. So get those nominations in. And then lastly, this is the start to a great series. So we just want to make sure that you all will come back and continue to engage with us in some very important conversations. So just to give you a glimpse of what's to come, in honor of Black History Month, which Black History is every day, by the way, but in honor of Black History Month, in January, February, we're going to be kind of centering our conversations around that theme. So we're going to be looking at James Baldwin in the very next conversation. Then following up with that, the following month, talking about anti-racist leadership. So looking at education and anti-racism from a leadership perspective. Then in March, being Black and teaching STEM. And then in April, measuring student achievement. So just some things to keep on your radar and your calendar as we draw nearer to those dates. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our amazing panelists and the wisdom that you have sought, or that you have provided for us. So for those who are on, please make sure to share this even after we have concluded this evening so that someone can see and be touched in a special way by this. So again, thank you all and have a great night.